The rain hammered Kingston's back alleys that night, turning cracked pavement into rivers of filth and forgotten dreams. And there, behind a grease-stained diner where tourists never wandered, stood a woman the city had swallowed whole. Her name was Chantel Bailey, and she was trembling, not from the Caribbean cold seeping through her thin uniform, not entirely, but from the impossible sight of Taesung Park, the Korean syndicate lord who'd left bodies floating in Kingston Harbor, holding an umbrella over her head like she was something precious. "I thought men like him didn't see people like me," she would whisper later, alone in the dark, her voice cracking, until the night he stepped out of his world and into mine, because men like Taesung Park didn't notice waitresses. They didn't offer shelter. They certainly didn't stop in rain-soaked alleys to watch a Jamaican woman eat stale bread with the kind of dignity that made hunger look like a choice. They said he once dismembered a lieutenant for skimming profits. That his silence before violence was a death sentence. That he built his Caribbean empire on disappeared witnesses and politicians who knew better than to ask questions. So why was Korea's most feared syndicate boss standing in the rain, his expensive suit soaking through, his cold eyes locked on a woman everyone else treated as invisible? But here's the thing about mercy. In a world built on blood and fear, it doesn't go unnoticed. It becomes a declaration, a claim. And that one act of kindness? It painted a target on Chantel's back that neither of them saw coming. The most dangerous man in the Caribbean just gave his umbrella to a woman the world forgot existed. Let that sink in. Have you ever been so invisible that one act of acknowledgement felt like resurrection? Like the universe suddenly remembered you had a name, a heartbeat, a soul? That's what it was for Chantel Bailey. A miracle wrapped in a death sentence, because in Kingston's underworld, where mercy is currency for the weak, Taesung's enemies were already calculating, already plotting, already sharpening their blades. So what happens when the coldest heart in Jamaica starts beating for the wrong person? What happens when a monster shows tenderness and the entire city smells weakness? Before I show you how blood was spilled, empires were shaken, and impossible choices were made. Hit that subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. My friend said I'd never reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me prove them wrong. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Downtown Kingston never truly slept. Beyond the reggae bars where tourists danced with locals, past the colonial buildings rotting into memories, the city pulsed with a darker heartbeat, a rhythm of money, power, and fear that the guidebooks never mentioned. And at the center of that heartbeat was Taesung Park, 32 years old, self-made, untouchable. He was the silent hand behind half of Jamaica's shadow economy loan sharking, real estate, smuggling routes that stretched from Montego Bay to Miami, political favors that never appeared in public record. If money moved through Kingston's underworld, Taesung controlled the current, but he wasn't born into power. No family dynasty, no inherited throne, just an orphan from Busan who clawed his way out of a state facility with nothing but hunger, rage, and a survival instinct that turned predatory the moment he tasted success. They said his stare could stop a man's heart. That he built his empire on the bones of those who underestimated him. That mercy was a language he'd never learned because no one had ever shown him any. And maybe that was true. His compound sat in the hills above Kingston, all reinforced concrete and bulletproof glass disguised as tropical luxury. Inside, the staff moved like shadows, silent, efficient, invisible. They knew the rules without being told. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't ask questions, and never, ever look the boss in the eye. The floors gleamed. The security cameras blinked. Everything pristine, controlled, monitored. But beneath the beauty was a darkness you could taste in the air, a weight. The kind of atmosphere where people vanished and no one dared ask where they went. Taesung preferred it that way. Control through fear, distance through silence. He trusted no one, loved nothing, expected betrayal because that's all he'd ever known. Until the night he saw Chantel Bailey kneeling in the rain, clutching stale bread like it was treasure, her cheap uniform soaked through, her lips trembling from cold and exhaustion. But her eyes, God, her eyes still had fight in them. And something inside him, something he thought he'd buried 15 years ago in a Busan alleyway where he almost starved to death, cracked wide open. Her name was Chantel Bailey, and she wasn't supposed to be here. 25 years old, Jamaican-born. Dreams bigger than the 2-room apartment she'd shared with her mother and 2 younger siblings in a neighborhood where hope went to die. She'd spent 4 years working doubles at a different diner in Spanish Town, saving every dollar, studying online when her shift ended at 2 a.m., pushing through exhaustion because Chantel Bailey believed in something most people in her world had given up on. She believed tomorrow could be different, that hard work mattered, that if she just pushed a little harder, sacrificed a little more, kept her head down and her dreams alive, she could change everything for her family. So when the job posting appeared, respectable restaurant in downtown Kingston, better pay, evening shifts only, housing assistance available, she didn't hesitate. She told her mother, "This is it, Mama. This is how we change our lives." She showed up for her first shift with her resume printed on good paper, her uniform pressed, and hope burning so bright in her chest it hurt. But the moment she walked through the back door of that diner, past the kitchen where the fluorescent lights flickered and the walls sweated grease, she knew something was wrong. The owner, a thin man with cold eyes named Thomas John, looked her up and down like she was livestock. "You're the new girl," he said. Not a question. A categorization. "Yes, sir. Chantel Bailey. I'm here for the waitress position. You'll work doubles, 6 days a week. You get 1 meal per shift. You don't steal. You don't complain. You don't talk back. Understood?" The pay he quoted was half what the posting promised. Chantel tried to argue, tried to show him the job description she'd printed out. He laughed. Actually laughed. "You think you got options, girl? You think restaurants in Kingston are lining up to hire someone from Spanish Town with no experience? You work here or you work nowhere. Choose." She needed the money. Her brother's school fees were due. Her mother's medication wasn't cheap. Her younger sister needed books. So Chantel Bailey, who'd never begged for anything in her life, swallowed her pride and said, "I'll take it." That was 6 months ago. 6 months of 16-hour shifts on her feet. 6 months of scrubbing floors that never seemed clean. Serving customers who snapped their fingers at her like she was a dog. Smiling through exhaustion that made her bones ache. 6 months of eating 1 meal a day and calling it enough. Of wiring half her tiny paycheck home and surviving on whatever scraps the kitchen didn't throw away. Of hiding bruises from where Thomas shoved her into the counter when she moved too slow. 6 months of being invisible. Her coworkers ignored her. The kitchen staff mocked her accent. The regular customers learned quickly that she was the one you could yell at without consequence. And Chantel took it. All of it. Because breaking meant losing everything. Because her family needed her. Because somewhere underneath the exhaustion and hunger and daily humiliation, she still believed she could survive this. But here's what you need to understand about Chantel Bailey. She never begged. Not once. Not when Thomas docked her pay for dropping a plate. Not when a drunk customer grabbed her wrist and she had to smile through it. Not when she worked 3 days straight without sleep because someone called in sick and Thomas said she'd cover it or she'd be fired. She never cried in front of them. She saved her tears for nights like this when the rain was loud enough to hide them, when the alley behind the diner was empty enough to let her guard down, when she could finally unwrap the piece of stale bread she'd hidden in her apron and eat it slowly, carefully, like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to life. Because it was. And that's exactly what Taesung Park saw when he stepped out of his armored car that night, rain hammering down, his mind still buzzing from the execution he'd just ordered in Port Antonio. He saw a woman who should have broken, who had every right to break, who the world was crushing under its boot, but who was still standing, still eating with dignity, still saving half her bread for tomorrow because giving up wasn't in her DNA. And in that moment, Taesung Park, who'd spent 15 years building walls around his heart, who'd murdered his way to power and called it survival, who'd sworn he'd never care about another human being as long as he lived, made a choice that would destroy them both. What Chantel didn't know, what she couldn't have known as she stood trembling in that alley, was that Taesung Park noticed everything. He'd been watching her for weeks, watching the way she moved through the diner like a ghost, never complaining, never breaking, watching the way she shared her tips with the homeless teenager who begged outside, watching the quiet dignity in her survival. And it reminded him of someone he'd tried to forget, a boy in Busan who used to steal bread and hide it under his mattress, who learned young that hunger wasn't the worst thing, losing yourself was. Taesung didn't know that his mercy was about to spark a war, that his enemies would see Chantel as the perfect weapon, that protecting her would cost him everything he'd built. He just knew he couldn't walk past her. Not tonight, not ever again. It's not Tae did. Chantel didn't know what to do with kindness. She stood frozen in the rain, water streaming down her face, staring at the umbrella now sheltering her from the storm. Her heart hammered against her ribs, not from gratitude, but from pure, primal fear, because men like him didn't help people like her without expecting something in return. "You're shaking," Taesung said, his voice quiet, almost gentle. It didn't match the rumors, didn't match the expensive suit, or the armed guards standing 20 feet back, watching with expressions that looked like shock. "I'm fine," Chantel managed, her Jamaican accent thick with tension. She took a step back, clutching what remained of her bread. Thank you for the umbrella, but I should. When did you eat last? He cut her off. Not demanding, just asking, like he actually wanted to know. Chantel's throat tightened. This morning. It was a lie. She'd eaten yesterday, half a portion. The other half was still wrapped in her apron for tomorrow. Tae-sung's jaw tightened. For a moment, something flickered across his face recognition. Maybe. Pain. It vanished so quickly she thought she'd imagined it. Wait here, he said. And before she could protest, he walked back to his car. Chantel should have run. Every instinct screamed at her to disappear into the Kingston night, to forget this ever happened. But her legs wouldn't move. And some desperate part of her, the part that was so tired of being invisible, wanted to know what happened next. Tae-sung returned with a container. The smell hit her first curry, rice, vegetables, real food, warm food. Her stomach twisted painfully. Take it, he said, holding it out. I can't. You can. His eyes locked on hers. And you will. It wasn't a command. It was something else. Something that sounded almost like begging wrapped in authority. Chantel's hands shook as she took the container. The warmth seeped through the plastic into her frozen fingers. Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. She would not cry in front of him. Thank you, she whispered. Tae-sung pulled something else from his pocket, a thick blanket. He draped it over her shoulders without asking permission, his movements careful, like she was made of glass. My men will follow you home, he said, to make sure you're safe. That's not necessary. It wasn't a question. This time, it was a command. Chantel wanted to argue, wanted to throw his charity back in his face and walk away with her dignity intact, but she was cold, so cold, and hungry, and the food in her hands smelled like heaven. Okay, she breathed. Tae-sung nodded once, then stepped back, taking the umbrella with him. The rain immediately soaked her again, but she was already wrapped in the blanket, already holding food she didn't earn. She watched him return to his car, watched the way his guards stared at him like he'd grown a second head. One of them, a younger man with a scar across his cheek, leaned in and whispered something. Tae-sung's response was sharp, cutting. The guard stepped back immediately. The convoy pulled away, but Chantel noticed the last car didn't follow. It stayed parked at the mouth of the alley, engine idling, waiting. For her, Chantel's rented room was a 15-minute walk from the diner, a converted storage space above a barber shop in a neighborhood where gunshots were background noise. The walls were thin. The ceiling leaked, but it was hers. She climbed the external staircase, still wrapped in the blanket, still holding the food container like it might vanish if she let go. Behind her, she heard a car door close. Footsteps, someone following at a distance. Protecting her, she realized. Or watching her. Maybe both. She unlocked her door, stepped inside, and locked it behind her. Then she stood there in the dark, shaking, until her legs gave out and she sank to the floor. That's when she cried. Not from fear, not from relief, but from confusion so profound it felt like drowning. Why would he help her? What did he want? What did it mean that the most dangerous man in Kingston just gave her food and a blanket and safety? She opened the container with trembling hands. The curry was still hot, rich, fragrant, more food than she'd eaten in 3 days combined. Chantel ate slowly, savoring every bite, crying between mouthfuls because kindness shouldn't feel this devastating. Outside, she heard the car engine still running, still watching, still there. By morning, the entire diner knew. Chantel showed up for her shift at 5 a.m., exhausted but fed, and found the kitchen staff whispering in tight clusters. They fell silent when she entered. Well, said Marie, one of the day shift waitresses, a woman with a sharp tongue and sharper eyes. Look who finally showed up. I'm not late, Chantel said, tying her apron. No, but you're different. Marie's smile was poison. Heard you had an interesting night. Chantel's blood went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because Thomas saw you. Out back, in the rain, with a man in a very expensive car. Marie leaned against the counter, enjoying herself. A Korean man, with bodyguards. The kitchen went deadly quiet. It wasn't, Chantel started. Wasn't what? Wasn't you getting cozy with one of Thomas's business associates? Marie's voice dripped with mock innocence. Because that's what it looked like. And you know what Thomas thinks about his girls getting ideas above their station. I'm not his girl, Chantel snapped. And I wasn't. Nothing happened. He just gave you food? A blanket? Had his men follow you home? Another waitress, Lisa, chimed in. Yeah, girl. Nothing happened. That's why he's never looked at any of us. But he stopped his whole convoy for you. She thinks she's special now, someone muttered. She thinks she's better than us. Probably sleeping with him already. The words hit like fists. Chantel's hands clenched into fists at her sides. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't. Save it. Marie turned away, dismissive. Just don't come crying when he's done with you and you've got nothing left. Men like that don't help girls like us out of kindness. They own you. And the moment you're not interesting anymore, you disappear. Chantel wanted to scream that she'd said no, that she'd tried to walk away, that she didn't want his protection or his food or his attention. But the truth was more complicated than that. Because part of her, a small, desperate part she hated, had been grateful, had felt seen, had wanted to matter to someone, even if that someone was dangerous. And now she was paying the price. Across town, in a penthouse overlooking Kingston Harbor, Taesung Park stood at his floor-to-ceiling window and stared at nothing. His lieutenant, a man named Jiho, cleared his throat. Sir? The Port Antonio shipment needs your approval. Taesung didn't respond. Sir? Give me the files tomorrow. Jiho hesitated. In the 5 years he'd worked for Taesung, the boss had never delayed a decision. Never shown distraction. Never looked. Haunted. Is everything all right? Jiho asked carefully. Taesung's reflection in the glass was expressionless. Fine. It's just the men are talking. About last night. Now Taesung turned, his eyes cold enough to drop the temperature in the room. And what are they saying? Jiho swallowed. That you stopped for a woman, a waitress, that you gave her food, that you had her followed home. Is that a problem? No, sir. Of course not. It's just... Jiho chose his words carefully. Unprecedented. The men are wondering what it means. It means I did what I wanted, Taesung said flatly. Tell them to focus on their jobs and stay out of mine. Yes, sir. Jiho left, but his concern lingered in the air like smoke, because the men weren't the only ones wondering what it meant. Taesung himself didn't have an answer. He'd been thinking about her all night, about the way she held that bread with such careful dignity, about the fight still burning in her eyes despite everything trying to extinguish it. He'd seen her before that night. Days ago. Weeks, maybe. He'd been at the diner for a meeting with Thomas, the owner who laundered money through the business. Taesung had noticed her then, the way she moved through the space like a ghost, invisible to everyone who mattered. He'd watched her pocket a tip from a table, then turn around and give half of it to a homeless teenager begging outside the door. She'd kept nothing for herself, just given it away. Like money meant less than dignity. Like kindness cost nothing, even when she had nothing to give. And something about that about her had lodged in his chest like a bullet he couldn't remove. He'd told himself to forget it, to focus on business, to remember that caring about people got you killed in this world. But then he'd seen her in the rain. And mercy, that foreign, dangerous thing, had cracked through 15 years of ice. Taesung picked up his phone and dialed. Watch her, he said when his head of security answered. The waitress. Chantel Bailey. I want eyes on her at all times. Anyone threatens her, anyone touches her, I want to know immediately. Understood, sir. Should we be... subtle? I don't care about subtle. I care about safe. He hung up and returned to the window. Somewhere out there, Chantel Bailey was probably terrified, probably regretting ever accepting his help, probably cursing the moment he'd noticed her, but she was fed, and warm, and protected. That would have to be enough. It wasn't enough. By the end of the week, Chantel's life had become a nightmare. Someone spat in her water bottle. She found it later, warm and violated. Her pay envelope was lighter than usual. When she questioned Thomas, he shrugged. Adjustment for broken dishes. I didn't break any dishes. Then I guess you should work more carefully. Her bag was slashed. The money she'd been saving for her brother's school fees gone. And everywhere she went, she heard the whispers. Sleeping with the Korean. Thinks she's too good for us now. Wait until he's done with her. Then we'll see how special she is. Chantel tried to ignore it, tried to keep her head down and work. But the cruelty was relentless, suffocating. One night, she found a note tucked into her locker, written in shaky handwriting. Pretty girls who attract devils end up dead. She stared at it for a long time, her hands shaking. Then she went back to work, because what choice did she have? But somewhere across Kingston, in offices where men made money from human suffering, someone else was reading a different note. A gang leader named Rashad looked at the photo on his phone, Chantel Bailey, walking home in the rain, and smiled. Easy money, he said to his lieutenant. We grab the girl. The Korean pays. Simple. You sure that's smart? Going after one of Park's people? Rashad's smile widened. She's not his people. She's just some girl he looked at twice. He won't burn the city down for a waitress, but he'll pay to avoid the embarrassment. Trust me." The lieutenant didn't look convinced. "And if you're wrong? Then I'm wrong. But if I'm right, we're rich." The photo was sent. The plan was made. The price was set. And Chantel Bailey, who just wanted to survive one more day, had no idea that mercy was the most expensive thing in the world, or that she was about to pay for it in blood. The breaking started small. Chantel learned quickly that jealousy was a slower poison than violence, but just as lethal. It started with her morning coffee, the one small luxury she allowed herself from the diner's machine. She took a sip and immediately tasted something wrong. Bitter. Chemical. She spat it into the sink and found Lisa smirking from across the kitchen. "Something wrong with your coffee, princess?" Lisa asked sweetly. Chantel said nothing, just dumped it out and worked her shift on an empty stomach. The next day, her time card was altered. According to the system, she'd clocked in 2 hours late. Thomas docked her pay without listening to her protests. "Don't like the rules? There's the door," he said, jerking his thumb toward the exit. But Chantel couldn't leave. Not yet. She needed 3 more weeks of pay to cover her sister's books and her mother's medication. 3 more weeks and she could quit, find something else, disappear. She just had to survive 3 more weeks. The universe, apparently, had other plans. Her locker was next. She opened it Friday morning to find her spare uniform shredded, the fabric hanging in strips like someone had taken scissors or a knife to it with methodical violence. A message. Chantel stood there staring at the ruined clothes, her throat tight, her hands shaking with rage she couldn't express. "Wow, that's rough," Marie said, appearing behind her. "Guess someone doesn't like you very much." "Who did this?" Chantel's voice was dangerously quiet. Marie shrugged, examined her nails. "How should I know? Maybe you should ask your Korean boyfriend to buy you new ones." "Oh wait, he hasn't been back, has he? Guess you weren't that interesting after all." The words hit their target. Because Marie was right. Taesung hadn't returned, hadn't sent messages, hadn't done anything except keep that one car parked outside her building at night, watching, always watching, but never approaching. And Chantel didn't know what that meant, didn't know if she was protected or trapped or marked for something worse than what she already had. "I don't have a boyfriend," Chantel said through clenched teeth. "Korean or otherwise. And I don't know what you think happened, but, oh, honey." Marie's smile was pitying, cruel. "We all know what happened. You spread your legs for a rich man hoping to escape this place. Tale as old as time. Problem is, men like that, they don't rescue girls like us. They use us until they're bored, then throw us back where they found us, sometimes in worse condition. That's not—" "I'm trying to help you," Marie interrupted. Fair warning from someone who's been around longer. "Whatever you think he promised you, it was a lie, and the sooner you accept that, the less it'll hurt when he proves it." She walked away, leaving Chantel alone with her destroyed uniform and the sinking feeling that maybe Marie was right. Maybe kindness was just cruelty in a prettier package. That night, Chantel tried to quit. She found Thomas in his office, counting money with the door half open, and knocked softly. "What?" he barked without looking up. "Mr. John, I need to give my notice. 2 weeks. Or I can leave now if you prefer, but I can't." "No." Chantel blinked. "Excuse me?" Now Thomas looked up, his eyes cold. "You don't get to quit. Not until I say so. I'm not a slave. I can leave whenever—" "You're working under a fake name, aren't you?" Thomas leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Chantel Bailey. Except that's not the name on any official documents in Jamaica, is it? You got that job application from a friend who faked references. You're not registered with the labor board. You're not legal." Chantel's blood turned to ice. "1 phone call," Thomas continued, voice pleasant now. "And I have immigration here in 20 minutes. They'll detain you, probably deport you. And good luck finding work after that kind of record. You wouldn't try me." His smile was razor sharp. "You work until I say you're done. And right now, with all the attention you've attracted, I think it's better you stay exactly where I can see you. Understood?" Chantel couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. She nodded once, jerky and mechanical. "Good. Now get back to work." "And Chantel?" Thomas waited until she met his eyes. "Your Korean friend might have power, but he doesn't own this diner. I do. And if you think running to him will solve your problems, remember men like him don't care about broken toys. They just find new ones." She left the office feeling like the walls were closing in. Trapped. That's what she was. Trapped by lies, by poverty, by a system designed to keep girls like her desperate and silent. The car was still outside when she walked home that night. Still watching. Still there. She almost knocked on the window. Almost begged whoever was inside to take her away from this nightmare. But pride, that stubborn thing that kept her spine straight, stopped her. She wouldn't beg. Not from Thomas. Not from Tae-sung. Not from anyone. Tae-sung watched the security footage from his office and felt rage building like a storm. He'd had cameras installed in the diner 3 days ago. Tiny, invisible, everywhere. He told himself it was business. Thomas laundered money for him, so surveillance was just smart practice. But really, he was watching her. He'd seen the coffee incident, the locker, the confrontation with Thomas, every cruelty, every indignity, every moment she held herself together when lesser people would have shattered. "Sir?" Jiho appeared in the doorway. "The Thomas John situation. Do you want us to—" "No." Tae-sung's voice was tight, controlled, barely. "Not yet. He's threatening her. You saw the footage." "I saw it." "Then why?" "Because she has to choose." Tae-sung cut him off. "I gave her protection. I gave her a way out. If she wants it, she knows how to reach me." Jiho frowned. "And if she doesn't? Then I'm reading this wrong," Tae-sung thought. "Then mercy was a mistake and I'm exactly the fool my enemies think I am." But he didn't say that. Just, "Then we respect her choice." Jiho left, clearly unconvinced. Tae-sung pulled something from his desk drawer, a business card. Thick stock, embossed with a phone number and nothing else. He'd had it delivered to the diner 5 days ago, tucked into a book Chantel had left on a break room shelf. He'd watched her find it. Watched her stare at the number for a long time before tucking it into her apron pocket. She hadn't called, and that meant either she was stronger than he thought, or more stubborn, or she simply didn't trust him. All three, probably. Tae-sung respected that, even as it drove him insane. He wanted to storm into that diner, drag Thomas out by his throat, and make an example so bloody that no one in Kingston would ever think about touching her again. But that wasn't protection. That was ownership. And something about Chantel Bailey made him want to be better than what he was, even if it killed him, even if she never called. His phone buzzed. A message from his surveillance team. 3 men casing the diner. Local gang, Rashad's crew. They're taking photos of the target. Tae-sung's jaw clenched. "Do not engage. Just watch. Report all activity." He wasn't worried. His men were better trained, better armed, and loyal unto death. If anyone tried to touch her, they'd die screaming. But something cold settled in his chest anyway, because he'd underestimated how quickly word would spread, how visible his one act of mercy had made her. In trying to protect Chantel, he'd painted a target on her back, and now the vultures were circling. Chantel found the note on Thursday. She'd just finished a brutal double shift, her feet screaming, her back aching, when she opened her locker for her things. A folded piece of paper fell out. She picked it up with shaking hands. "Pretty girls who attract devils end up dead." The handwriting was different from the previous notes. Messier. More aggressive. Chantel looked around the empty break room, heart pounding. Someone had been in her locker. Again. Someone knew where she worked, where she stored her things, what shifts she had. Someone was watching her as carefully as Tae-sung's men were, but with different intentions. She pulled out the business card she'd been carrying for days, the one with just a phone number. No name, no explanation. She'd found it tucked into her book and known immediately who it was from. The smart thing would be to call, to ask for help, to admit she was in over her head. But calling meant surrender. Calling meant admitting she couldn't handle this alone. Calling meant belonging to him in some fundamental way she couldn't take back. So Chantel Bailey did what she'd always done. She tore up the note, threw it away, and walked home alone. The car followed her, like always. But for the first time, she wondered if the men inside were enough. If protection from a distance meant anything when the danger was already inside her life, wrapped around her throat like a noose. That night, across town, Rashad looked at the latest photos and smiled. "Tomorrow night," he told his men. "After her shift. Same alley where Loverboy found her. We grab her quick, move her to the safe house and send our demands. We'll have our money within hours. And if Park doesn't pay," Rashad shrugged, "then we sell her somewhere else. Pretty girl like that? Caribbean trafficking routes are always buying. Either way, we profit." His lieutenant nodded slowly. "When do we move?" "Tomorrow. Friday night. She works late, walks home alone, and the street's empty. Perfect conditions." The plan was set. The trap was laid. And Chantel Bailey, walking home with her head down and her pride intact, had no idea that tomorrow night would be the night everything changed, or that Mercy, that dangerous, expensive thing, was about to cost more than anyone could have imagined. The trap is set. Chantel has no idea what's coming. And Taesung? He's about to learn that protection from a distance isn't enough when the monsters come for the people you care about. Chapter 4 is where everything explodes, literally. Hit subscribe and comment, protect her if you're invested in this story. My brother bet me I couldn't hit 1,000 subscribers, let's prove him wrong together. Friday night came with a warning the universe gave to no one. Chantel worked her shift in a fog of exhaustion, every muscle screaming, every smile forced. The diner was busier than usual, tourists stumbling and drunk from the clubs, locals looking for late-night food, and Thomas worked her without mercy. Table 6 needs refills. Table 9 wants their check. Move faster, Chantel. You're dragging tonight. She wanted to scream that she'd worked 14 hours straight, that her feet were bleeding inside her shoes, that she hadn't eaten since yesterday. But she bit her tongue, smiled, and kept moving. By the time the last customer left and the kitchen closed, it was past midnight. Chantel clocked out, grabbed her bag lighter now without the stolen money she'd never recovered, and stepped into the alley behind the diner. The rain had started again. Not heavy like the night Taesung found her, but steady, persistent. The kind of rain that soaked through clothes slowly, like creeping cold. She pulled her jacket tighter and started walking. The alley was dark. One streetlight at the far end, flickering like a dying heartbeat. The dumpsters cast long shadows. Water pooled in potholes, reflecting nothing. Chantel had walked this path 100 times. 1,000. It was muscle memory now, head down. Walk fast. Don't make eye contact with anyone lurking in doorways. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the shadows moved wrong. She was halfway through the alley when she heard footsteps behind her. Heavy, multiple, moving fast. Chantel's heart kicked into overdrive. She walked faster, not quite running, not yet, just moving with purpose toward the streetlight, toward safety. A hand grabbed her arm. She screamed and spun, swinging her bag wildly. It connected with something solid, a face, a shoulder, and someone cursed. Grab her, quickly. 3 men, maybe 4. She couldn't see clearly in the dark, just shapes closing in, hands reaching, rough voices speaking in patois too fast for her to follow. Chantel fought like her life depended on it, because it did. She kicked, scratched, bit down hard when fingers got too close to her face. She tasted blood not hers, and someone yelped. Her bag was ripped away. Someone grabbed her hair, yanking her head back brutally. Stop fighting, bitch, or we'll... She drove her elbow backward into soft stomach, more cursing. A fist connected with her ribs and the air exploded from her lungs. She stumbled, gasping, and hands grabbed her from behind. They were dragging her toward a van now, engine running, side door open like a hungry mouth. Chantel screamed again, louder, hoarse, desperate. Help! Someone! A hand clamped over her mouth, cutting off the sound. She bit down hard, tasted more blood. The hand jerked away. She bit me. Fucking, just get her in the van. They were lifting her now, carrying her, and Chantel thrashed wildly, tears streaming down her face, mixing with rain and blood and terror so thick she could barely breathe. This was how she'd die. In an alley, alone, stolen by men who saw her as nothing but currency. She'd survived poverty, abuse, exploitation, hunger, cruelty, all of it just to end here. No, no. She twisted violently, managed to get one leg free, and kicked backward. Her heel connected with something, a knee, maybe, and someone howled. Then she heard it. Tires, squealing, close. Car doors slamming, shouting in Korean. And then, explosion. Not literal, but violence so sudden and complete it felt like the world detonated. The hands holding her vanished. She hit the ground hard, palms scraping against wet concrete. Through blurred vision, she saw figures moving fast, precise, lethal. Taesung's men. They moved like demons. Like machines built for killing. One of her attackers tried to run and was tackled within 3 steps. The sickening crunch of bone breaking. Screaming. Another pulled a knife and lunged. He was disarmed in seconds. The blade turned against him. Blood sprayed across wet pavement. The man who'd grabbed her hair was on his knees now, begging in patois, hands raised. It didn't matter. He was dragged backward into the shadows, and his begging turned to shrieking. Chantel scrambled backward against the dumpster, shaking so hard her teeth chattered, watching the violence unfold like something from a nightmare. And then he was there, Taesung, walking through the rain like it didn't exist. his suit soaked, his expression carved from ice. But his eyes, God, his eyes burned with fury so intense it made the air feel thin. He knelt beside her, and his hands, those hands that had just ordered executions, touched her face with infinite gentleness. Chantal, she couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, just stared at him with wide, terrified eyes. Are you hurt? His voice was soft, careful, like she might shatter. She shook her head, then nodded, then shook it again because she didn't know anymore. Everything hurt. Nothing hurt. She was numb and on fire simultaneously. You should have called me, Taesung whispered, and there was something in his voice that sounded almost like grief. You should have. I didn't want. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to owe you. You don't owe me anything. His thumb brushed her cheek, wiping away tears she didn't know she'd shed. You never did. Behind them, the violence continued. Methodical, brutal. The sounds made Chantal flinch. Don't look, Taesung said quietly. Just look at me. So she did. And in his eyes, she saw something that terrified her more than the attack. She saw someone who would burn Kingston to the ground to keep her safe. Someone who already was. Taesung lifted her like she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. She should have protested, should have insisted she could walk, but her legs wouldn't work. Her body was shutting down, shock and adrenaline and terror crashing into each other like waves. I've got you, he murmured against her hair. I've got you. You're safe now. Over his shoulder, she saw his men, 6 of them, surrounding the 4 men who'd tried to take her. One was unconscious, one was bleeding heavily, the other 2 were on their knees, hands behind their heads, faces pale with terror. Sir? One of Taesung's men approached. What do you want us to do with them? Taesung's expression didn't change, didn't soften. He looked at the men who'd touched her, tried to steal her, and his voice went flat, dead. Anyone who touched her disappears by morning. Anyone who planned this disappears by morning. Anyone who knew about this and said nothing disappears by morning. He paused, letting that sink in, and make sure Rashad understands exactly what happens when someone touches what's mine. We're on it. Sir, we're sorry, one of the kneeling men gasped. We didn't know, we thought she was just. You thought she was nothing. Taesung's voice could have frozen the rain. You thought wrong. He turned away before they could beg, carrying Chantal toward his car. She pressed her face against his chest, blocking out the sounds that followed. The pleading, the screaming, the abrupt, terrible silence. She didn't want to know, didn't want to see, because knowing meant accepting what Taesung really was, what he was capable of, what he'd just done was doing for her. The car door opened. He slid inside, still holding her, and barked orders to his driver. The penthouse. Now. Call Dr. Yoon. Tell him to be there in 20 minutes. Yes, sir. The car moved, smooth and fast. Chantal felt the motion but couldn't process it. Everything felt distant. Underwater. Wrong. You're going into shock, Taesung said quietly. He was wrapping a blanket around her, where had that come from, and pulling her closer against his warmth. Just breathe. Slow. With me. In. Out. That's it. She tried. Failed. Tried again. Good. You're doing so well. Just breathe. They were going to, she whispered. They weren't. They didn't. You're safe. But they wanted to. It doesn't matter what they wanted. His arms tightened around her. They failed. You fought. You survived. And they're paying for it now. Chantal closed her eyes, felt tears leaking out again. I didn't call you. I know. I should have called you. Yes. No anger in his voice. Just acknowledgement. You should have. I'm sorry. Don't. Taesung tilted her face up, forcing her to meet his eyes. Don't apologize for surviving. Don't apologize for being strong. Just, he exhaled slowly, and for the first time, she saw the mask crack, saw fear underneath. Just promise me something. What? Promise me you'll never put yourself in danger to protect your pride again. Promise me that if you need help you'll call. His voice dropped to something raw, desperate. Because I can protect you from everyone in this city except yourself. Chantal stared at him. At this man who killed without hesitation but held her like she was precious. Who spoke about violence like business but looked at her like she was the only real thing in his world. Okay, she whispered. Say it. I promise. He nodded once, something easing in his expression, and pulled her back against his chest. Good. Now rest. We'll be there soon. But Chantel couldn't rest. Because reality was setting in. Taesung had saved her, protected her, killed for her, and now she was in his car, wrapped in his arms, heading to his home. She wasn't a guest. She wasn't a charity case. She was something else entirely. Something that terrified her. Something that, God help her, felt like relief. Outside, Kingston disappeared into lights and rain and distance. And behind them, in that alley, 4 men learned the most important rule of Taesung Park's world. You don't touch what's his. Not if you want to live. Chantel woke to sunlight. Real sunlight. Not the thin, filtered kind that squeezed through her rented room's dirty window, but warm, golden light that filled an entire space like liquid honey. She lay there, disoriented, staring at a ceiling that wasn't hers. White, smooth, expensive. Where? Memory crashed back in waves. The alley, the attack, the blood, Taesung's eyes, the car. A doctor examining her, checking her ribs, bandaging her scraped palms, asking questions she couldn't focus enough to answer. And then, nothing. Just darkness. Exhaustion so complete it pulled her under before she could protest. Now she was where? Chantel sat up slowly, wincing at the pull in her ribs. The room around her was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Kingston Harbor. Furniture that looked like it cost more than she'd earn in 5 years. Soft carpet, art on the walls. Everything pristine and expensive, and so far from her life it felt like a different planet. She was wearing clothes that weren't hers, soft cotton pajamas. Clean, perfectly fitting. Someone had changed her, washed her, put her in this bed. Panic spiked. She threw off the cover's silk sheets. Oh God, and stumbled toward the door. Her legs shook but held. The door opened before she reached it. Taesung stood there, changed from last night's blood-stained suit into casual clothes, black pants, white shirt, barefoot. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept at all. "You're awake," he said. Relief flooded his expression. "How are you feeling? Where am I?" Chantel's voice was hoarse. "My home. You brought me here." "Without asking me." "You were unconscious," Taesung said carefully. "And your apartment isn't safe. Not anymore. That doesn't give you the right to. They were going to kidnap you, Chantel. Sell you. Use you as leverage against me." His voice stayed calm, but something dangerous flickered underneath. "Your apartment is a target now. Anyone who wants to hurt me knows exactly where to find you." Chantel's hands clenched into fists. "So you just... What? Decided I live here now? That I belong to you?" "I decided you stay alive." He stepped into the room, and she instinctively backed up. His jaw tightened. "I'm not going to hurt you. I would never hurt you. But you'll control me? Make decisions for me? Trap me in your golden cage because you think you know better? This isn't a cage." "Really?" Chantel gestured at the luxury surrounding them. "Because I don't remember having a choice. Don't remember you asking if I wanted to be here. You just took me, like property. Like something you own. That's not... Then what is it?" Her voice cracked. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You saved me. I'm grateful for that. But saving someone doesn't mean you get to decide their entire life." Taesung was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, almost gentle. "You're right." Chantel blinked. "What?" "You're right. I should have asked. Should have given you a choice." He ran a hand through his hair, a rare show of frustration. "But I couldn't risk it. Couldn't risk you saying no and walking back into danger because you're too stubborn and proud to accept help. So you made the choice for me." "Yes." At least he was honest. "I can't stay here," Chantel said firmly. "I appreciate what you did last night, but I need to go home. Need to go back to work. The diner is closed." She froze. "What?" Thomas John is. No longer in business. His assets have been seized. The diner is shuttered pending investigation." Chantel felt the floor tilt. What did you do?" "What I should have done weeks ago." Taesung's expression was unreadable. "He threatened you, exploited you, kept you trapped. So I removed him from the equation." "You can't just... He was my boss. That was my job. That was your prison." His voice hardened. "And you're free now." "Free?" Chantel laughed, but it came out harsh, broken. "I'm in your penthouse, wearing clothes you provided, with no job and no way to support myself. How is that freedom? Because you don't have to worry about money, about rent, about food, about being myself?" She stepped closer, anger overriding fear. "About making my own choices? About having control over any part of my life?" Taesung's mask slipped. She saw frustration there, confusion, like he genuinely didn't understand why she was upset. "I'm trying to protect you," he said, "by making me dependent on you, by taking away everything I built, however small it was, and replacing it with your version of what I should have. Your version was starvation and abuse. It was mine." Chantel's voice rang through the room. "Don't you understand? It was mine. My choices, my struggle, my dignity. And you just took it all away." Silence stretched between them, heavy and painful. "What do you want me to do?" Tae-sung asked finally. "Let you go back out there? Wait for the next gang to try taking you? For the next threat? For the next—" "I want you to ask me what I want," Chantel said quietly. "Instead of deciding for me." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he took a breath. "Okay, what do you want?" "I want—" She paused, because she didn't know how to articulate the tangled mess of fear and gratitude and anger and something else she didn't want to name. "I want to understand why." "Why what?" "Why you care." She met his eyes. "Why a man like you stopped for someone like me. Why you've done any of this. Because men they don't act like this without wanting something." Tae-sung was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "You remind me of nothing." Chantel frowned. "What?" "That's the truth. You remind me of nothing. No one. You're just you." He looked away, jaw working. "But that's a lie, too. I don't understand." "You remind me of someone I used to be." His voice dropped. "Before I learned that mercy gets you killed. Before I built walls so high nothing could touch me. You're still fighting with dignity intact. Still saving half your bread for tomorrow even when tomorrow looks impossible. And watching you—" He stopped. Started again. "Watching you made me remember what it felt like to be human." The raw honesty in his voice stole her breath. "So I stopped," he continued. "Because I couldn't walk past you. Because something about you cracked through 15 years of ice. And I know that's not fair to you. Know that my protection comes with complications. But I couldn't." His hands clenched. "I couldn't let you break." Chantel felt tears finally spill over. "I'm not your redemption. I know. And I can't be the reason you become something different. I know that too." "Then what are we doing here?" she whispered. "What is this?" Tae-sung looked at her with eyes that held too much longing and regret, and something that looked almost like hope. "I don't know, but I'm asking now. What do you want, Chantel? Tell me and I'll make it happen." She wanted to hate him. Wanted to scream that she never asked for any of this, that his mercy had ruined her quiet survival. But she'd also felt his arms around her last night, heard his voice talking her through shock, seen the fear in his eyes when he asked her to promise she'd call. She took a shaky breath. "I want you to give me time, to process this, to figure out what happens next without pressure or threats or—" "Done. And I want my own space. In this apartment or somewhere else. I don't care. But somewhere that's mine. The guest suite is yours. I'll have your things brought from your apartment. And I want honesty." She stepped closer. "No more decisions made for me. No more surprises. If something's happening, I deserve to know." Tae-sung nodded slowly. "Okay. Okay? You have my word." Chantel searched his face for lies, for manipulation, for any sign this was a game. She found none. Just exhaustion and sincerity, and the face of a man who genuinely didn't know how to do this, whatever this was, but was trying. "Okay," she echoed. They stood there in the sun-filled room, two people from impossible different worlds, bound together by mercy and violence, and something neither could name yet. Outside, Kingston sprawled below them, unaware that last night changed everything, that the waitress no one noticed was now untouchable, that the man who built his empire on blood had just offered surrender to a woman in silk pajamas, and that sometimes the most dangerous cages are the ones that feel like safety. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Chantel stayed in the guest suite, a space larger than her entire previous apartment, with its own bathroom, closet, and balcony overlooking the harbor. Tae-sung kept his distance, mostly. She'd see him in the mornings, drinking coffee on his own balcony, phone pressed to his ear, conducting business in rapid Korean. He'd nod when their eyes met. Nothing more. Meals appeared at regular intervals, prepared by a chef she never saw, delivered by staff who moved like ghosts. Real food. Warm. Abundant. She ate it all and felt guilty for enjoying it. Her things arrived from her apartment in boxes. Not many. Her whole life fit in 4 cardboard boxes. She unpacked slowly, trying to make the guest suite feel like hers. Failed. Because nothing about this felt real. On the third day, she found Tae-sung in his office. She knocked. He looked up from his laptop, surprise flickering across his face. "Chantel, is everything okay? I need to talk to you." He closed the laptop immediately. "Of course. Sit." She did, perching on the edge of the leather chair across from his desk. "I've been thinking." About what happens next. I can't just live here indefinitely. I need a job. Need purpose. Need to send money home to my family." "Your family is taken care of." Tae-sung said it casually, like it was obvious. Chantel froze. "What?" "Your mother's medical bills are paid through the year. Your brother's school fees are current. Your sister has the books she needed." He pulled a folder from his desk and slid it across. "All documented here." She stared at the folder like it might bite her. How do you even know about my family?" "I know everything about you, Chantel." No apology in his voice. "Where you're from, who you support, what you left behind. I needed to understand who you were to protect you properly. That's..." She didn't know whether to be furious or grateful. "That's invasive." "Yes. And you paid for everything? Without asking. Would you have let me if I asked?" "No." "Exactly." He leaned back in his chair. "So I did it anyway. Because your family's suffering while you're here, worrying about them, defeats the entire purpose of keeping you safe." Chantel opened the folder with shaking hands. Bank statements, receipts, proof of everything he claimed. Her mother's hospital account cleared, her brother's school fully paid, her sister's scholarship awarded for books and supplies. It was too much, too fast. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you were eating stale bread to send money home." Tae-sung's voice was quiet. "Because you deserve to live without that weight on your shoulders. Because I can fix this. So I did." Tears blurred her vision. "I can't accept this." "You already have. It's done. That's not, you can't just..." "Chantel." He waited until she looked up. "Let me do this, please. You don't owe me anything. This isn't about debt or obligation. It's just..." He paused, choosing words carefully. "It's just me trying to give you what you've needed for a long time. Space to breathe." She wanted to argue, wanted to throw his generosity back in his face and demand he undo it all. But God, the relief. The pure, overwhelming relief of knowing her family was okay. That she didn't have to choose between eating and sending money home. That maybe, finally, she could rest. "Thank you," she managed. Tae-sung's expression softened. "You're welcome." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Chantel asked the question that had been burning in her mind for days. "The men from the alley. What happened to them?" His face went blank, shuddered. "They're gone." "Gone where?" "Just gone." "You killed them?" "Yes." No hesitation, no shame. "They tried to take you, to hurt you, to sell you. So yes, I killed them. And I'd do it again." Chantel should have been horrified, should have been terrified of the man sitting across from her, calmly admitting to murder. But she'd felt those hands grabbing her, had heard their intentions, knew exactly what would have happened if Tae-sung hadn't arrived. "I should feel bad about that," she said quietly. "But you don't." "No." She met his eyes. "I don't. Does that make me a terrible person?" "It makes you a survivor." Tae-sung stood, walked around the desk, sat on the edge, closer now. "And for what it's worth, I'd kill anyone who tried to hurt you. Not because you belong to me, not because I own you, but because in a world full of cruelty, you're one of the rare people who deserves protection." His words hit harder than they should have. "I don't know how to do this," Chantel admitted. "How to be here. How to accept help without feeling like I'm losing myself. Then we figure it out together." He offered his hand. "No more decisions without you. No more surprises. We do this your way." Chantel looked at his hand, scarred knuckles, calloused palms, hands that had killed and protected in equal measure. She took it. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid. "Together," she agreed. Outside, the sun set over Kingston Harbor, painting the sky in shades of gold and blood. And inside the penthouse, two impossible people made an impossible promise: to protect each other. To be honest, to try. But somewhere in the city below, wheels were already turning. Because Tae-sung's lieutenant, Ji-ho, sat in a dark car with a phone pressed to his ear. "Yes," he said quietly. "She's at the penthouse. He's completely distracted. If you want to move against him, now is the time." The voice on the other end laughed. "Perfect. The great Tae-sung Park, brought down by a waitress. I'll contact you soon with the plan." Ji-ho hung up and stared at the penthouse glowing in the distance. He'd served Taesung for 5 years, loyally, faithfully, but loyalty had its limits, and power had its price. The boss had become weak, distracted, human, and in their world, humanity was the fastest way to die. Jiho started the car and drove into the Kingston night, betrayal sitting heavy in his chest, but not heavy enough to stop him. Chantel found the routine surprisingly easy to slip into. Wake up to sunrise over the harbor, coffee on the balcony, real Jamaican Blue Mountain, the expensive kind she'd only ever served, never tasted, breakfast prepared by the invisible chef, hours spent reading books from Taesung's library, or simply existing without the constant pressure of survival. 2 weeks passed in this strange, suspended peace. Her body healed, the bruises faded. The scrapes on her palms became thin white lines. She gained weight, healthy weight, the kind that came from regular meals and actual rest. She talked to her mother via video call for the first time in months, saw her sister's new books, heard her brother laugh without the edge of worry underneath. "You look good, Chantel," her mother said, eyes bright with relief. "Whatever this new job is, it agrees with you." Chantel smiled and lied. "It does, Mama. It really does." Because how could she explain the truth? That she lived in a mafia boss's penthouse? That the money supporting their family came from violence and crime? That she was protected by the same man who'd probably destroyed dozens of families just like theirs? She couldn't. So she didn't. But the lies sat heavy in her chest. Taesung kept his promise. He consulted her on everything. Where she wanted to eat, what she needed, whether she was comfortable. They fell into something that looked almost like friendship. Coffee together in the mornings, dinners when he wasn't working late, conversations about nothing important, books, movies, her memories of Jamaica before everything went wrong. He never touched her without permission, never pushed for more than she offered, just existed beside her with patience that seemed infinite. It felt safe. It felt real. It felt like the beginning of something neither of them could name yet. And then she overheard the phone call. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop. She'd been looking for Taesung to ask about a food delivery for her mother when she heard voices from his office. The door was cracked open. 2 voices, Taesung and someone else, speaking rapid Korean. Chantel almost walked away, almost respected his privacy. But then she heard her name. Chantel Bailey. Her feet stopped moving. The connections were established years ago. The other voice continued in English now. Jiho, she realized. Taesung's second in command. The Caribbean trafficking routes. The protection money from Montego Bay. It all flows through the same networks that enabled Thomas Jones' operation. And before John, it was... "Stop." Taesung's voice was tight. "You need to hear this, sir. The Bailey investigation shows clear links between our smuggling operations and the abuse ring operating in Spanish Town 5 years ago. The stepfather who..." I said stop. "Sir, she deserves to know. If she finds out on her own. She won't, because you're going to bury this. Deep. Understood?" Silence. Then Jiho's voice. "Careful. You can't hide this forever. The truth has a way of..." "I'll handle it. Just make sure those documents never surface." "Yes, sir." Footsteps. Chantel scrambled backward, heart pounding, flattening herself against the hallway wall. Jiho emerged from the office, saw her, and his face went carefully blank. "Miss Bailey," he said with a polite nod, then walked past. Chantel stood frozen, her mind racing. Caribbean trafficking routes, Spanish Town, abuse ring, 5 years ago. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. 5 years ago, when her stepfather's business associates would come to their house at night. When money flowed from nowhere, when Chantel, 16 years old, had finally grabbed her siblings and run. The same networks, the same operations. Taesung's empire enabled the very thing she'd fled. Her legs carried her into the office without permission. Taesung looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his face. "Chantel." "Spanish Town," she said, voice flat, dead. 5 years ago, tell me." His expression shuddered. "You shouldn't have heard that. But I did. So tell me. It's complicated." "No." She stepped closer. "It's actually very simple. Either your organization was connected to the trafficking ring operating out of Spanish Town, or it wasn't. Which is it?" Taesung stood slowly. "It was, but I didn't." "You didn't know?" Bitter laugh. "You didn't know that the money you were making came from selling girls? From protecting the men who..." Her voice cracked. "From protecting my stepfather? I inherited those roots from my predecessor. They were already established when I took over. And the moment I learned what they were really funding, I shut them down." "When?" Chantel demanded. "When did you shut them down?" He didn't answer fast enough. "How long?" she pressed. How long did you profit from that suffering before your conscience finally woke up? 3 years. Whisper quiet. It took me 3 years to untangle the connections and eliminate the operations cleanly. 3 years. Chantel felt something inside her shatter. 3 years while girls like me were being sold. While families were being destroyed. While my stepfather had enough money and protection to... She couldn't finish the sentence. Chantel. Did your money pay for his lawyer when the police finally arrested him? Did your protection keep him out of jail? Her hands were shaking. Did I survive him just to end up under the protection of the empire that enabled him? It's not that simple. Then make it simple, she screamed it. Didn't care who heard. Make it simple, Taesung. Tell me you weren't connected. Tell me your organization didn't profit from my suffering. Tell me that the man who saved me in the rain isn't the same man whose empire destroyed my childhood. Tell me! Taesung's face was pale. I can't. 2 words. That's all it took to destroy her. Chantel sank into the nearest chair, all the strength draining from her body. Oh my God, I didn't know about you specifically. Didn't know your story until after that night in the alley. But yes, structurally, systemically, my organization was connected to the network that... He stopped. Started again. I'm not innocent, Chantel. I've never claimed to be. But I've spent the last 2 years trying to dismantle what I inherited. Trying to make it right. You can't make this right. Her voice was hollow. You can't undo what was done. I know. The food. The protection. My family's bills. She looked up at him with eyes full of betrayal. It's all blood money, isn't it? Money earned from the same suffering I tried to escape. Yes, at least he was honest. I need to leave, Chantel said quietly. Chantel, I need to leave, she repeated, louder now. Right now. I can't be here. Can't look at you. Can't. Where will you go? His voice was desperate. It's not safe. The people who tried to take you are dead. Because of you. Because you killed them with the same hands that profit from trafficking. She stood on shaking legs. I'll take my chances. You'll die. Maybe. She whirled on him. But at least I'll die free. Free from your protection. Free from your guilt money. Free from the man whose empire destroyed everything I loved. Taesung moved around the desk, and she saw something break in his expression, saw the mask crack completely. He knelt. Actually knelt before her, something she knew instinctively he'd never done for anyone. Tell me how to fix this, he said, begged. Tell me what you need, and I'll make it happen. You can't fix this. Then tell me anyway. Chantel looked down at him, this powerful, dangerous man on his knees, and felt her heart break for both of them. I need you to let me go, she whispered. If you ever cared about me, even once, even a little, let me go. His hands clenched. I can't. You're not safe. I don't care about safe. Tears streamed down her face now. I care about being able to look at myself in the mirror. About not being complicit in the same system that destroyed me. About, she choked on a sob. About not loving someone whose hands are covered in blood that might be my own. The word hung between them. Loving. She'd said it. Couldn't take it back. Taesung's eyes closed briefly. When they opened, they held devastation. I will burn my own empire to give you back what you lost, he said quietly. Every root, every connection, every dollar earned from that network, I'll destroy it all. I'll dismantle everything I built if that's what it takes. That's not, but you have to live long enough to see it. He stood, still close enough to touch but not touching. Give me 1 week. 7 days to prove I can change this. To show you I'm not just the empire I inherited. And if after 7 days you still want to leave, I'll arrange everything. Money, protection, a clean identity, whatever you need to disappear safely. No strings, no conditions, just freedom. Chantel wanted to say no, wanted to walk out right then and never look back. But something in his face stopped her. Sincerity, desperation. The look of a man offering to tear down his own kingdom for one person. 1 week, she heard herself say. 1 week, he agreed. But I want the truth. All of it. No more hiding. No more protection from reality. Done. And I'm sleeping in the guest suite with the door locked. You stay on your side of the apartment. Of course. Chantel nodded once. Then walked out of his office before she could change her mind. Before she could see the way his hands shook. Before she could acknowledge that her heart was breaking not just from betrayal, but from the knowledge that she'd meant what she said. She'd fallen for the man whose empire destroyed her. And that truth was more devastating than any revelation about smuggling routes or blood money. Because how do you love someone when their success is built on your suffering? How do you forgive the unforgivable? And how do you walk away when staying feels like surrendering the last piece of your soul? Chantel locked herself in the guest suite and cried until she had nothing left. Outside, the sun set over Kingston, and in his office, Taesung Park made a series of phone calls that would shake the Caribbean underworld to its foundations, because he'd made a promise. 1 week to prove he could be better than his empire. 1 week to dismantle everything he'd built. 1 week to show the woman he loved that mercy wasn't just a moment in the rain, it was a choice he'd make every day for the rest of his life. Even if it destroyed him, especially if it destroyed him. Can love survive when the truth destroys everything you thought you knew? Can a monster become human? 7 days to prove redemption is possible. Comment burn it down if you think Taesung should destroy his empire for her. Hit subscribe, we're almost at 1,000 and I need your help to get there. The next chapter is where blood fills Kingston's streets. The war started at dawn. Chantel woke to the sound of Taesung's voice, not loud, but clipped, urgent, speaking rapid Korean into his phone. She pressed her ear against the guest suite door and caught fragments. All of them. By tonight. I don't care about the cost. Footsteps. Multiple people moving through the penthouse. The front door opening and closing. Engines starting in the parking garage below. Something was happening. She dressed quickly and emerged to find the living room transformed into a command center. Laptops open. Papers spread across every surface. Taesung standing at the window with 3 men she didn't recognize, pointing at a map of Kingston. He saw her. Their eyes met across the room. I'll call you back, he said into the phone, then walked toward her. You should stay in your room. What's happening? I'm keeping my promise. His voice was steady, but his eyes held something fierce, determined. I'm dismantling the network. All of it. How? By destroying everyone connected to what happened to you. The smuggling routes, the protection rackets, the money laundering operations. He glanced back at his men. It won't be quiet, and it won't be pretty, but it'll be thorough. Chantel felt her breath catch. You're starting a war. I'm ending one. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. The same network that enabled your stepfather has been operating for 15 years. It's connected to half the criminal enterprises in Jamaica. Taking it down means taking down everyone who profited from it. That could take months. Years. I have 7 days. A ghost of a smile. So I'm going to be efficient. One of his men called out in Korean. Taesung responded without looking away from her. I need you to stay here, he said. The penthouse is secure. My best men will be guarding it. But Kingston is going to become very dangerous very quickly. Because of me. Guilt twisted in her stomach. Because I asked you to... No, he cut her off firmly. Because I chose to. This isn't on you, Chantel. This is me correcting a mistake I should have fixed years ago. People are going to die. Yes, bad people. People who built empires on suffering. His jaw tightened. I've spent years being one of them. Now I'm burning it all down. He turned to leave, then stopped, looked back. When this is over, you'll have your freedom. Clean, safe, no connections to me or anything I've done. That's my promise. And you? She asked quietly. What happens to you when you've destroyed your own empire? Taesung's smile was sad. I become irrelevant, which is exactly what I deserve. Then he was gone. His men following, leaving Chantel alone in the penthouse with guards she couldn't see and questions that had no good answers. By noon, Kingston was in chaos. The first target was Thomas John. Taesung's men arrived at his home, a modest house in a decent neighborhood, and extracted him in broad daylight. No violence, no drama, just efficiency. Thomas was brought to a warehouse on the waterfront. Taesung was waiting. You threatened her, he said without preamble. Called immigration. Stole her wages. Made her life hell. Thomas's face had gone sheet white. I didn't know, I swear. I didn't know she was yours. She's not mine. She's her own person. But you hurt her anyway. Taesung's voice stayed level. Calm. So now you pay. Please. I'll do anything. You'll do exactly what I tell you. Taesung leaned forward. You're going to sign over the diner property. You're going to dissolve your business accounts. You're going to disappear from Kingston and never return. And if I ever hear you've hurt another woman, ever, I'll make sure you disappear permanently. Papers were produced. Thomas signed with shaking hands. You're bankrupt as of now, Taesung continued. Your accounts are frozen. Your assets seized. You have 24 hours to leave Jamaica. But that's everything I own. Then you understand how Chantel felt when you threatened to destroy her life. Taesung stood. Be grateful I'm letting you live. Thomas was escorted out. Broken, ruined, no longer a threat to anyone. One down. The gang came next. Rashad's crew had been operating out of a compound in the Western Hills, drugs, guns, kidnapping for ransom. They'd targeted Chantel. That made them dead men. They just didn't know it yet. Tae-sung didn't do this one personally. He sent his best team 6 men, heavily armed, with orders that were crystal clear. Everyone involved, no survivors. The attack happened at 2 a.m. Silent, surgical, brutal. By dawn, Rashad's entire operation was gone. The compound burned. The men vanished. The evidence of their existence erased so thoroughly it was like they'd never been. The message spread through Kingston's underworld like wildfire. Taesung Park was burning bridges, taking no prisoners, sparing no one. And the reason? A Jamaican waitress no one had cared about until he did. The diner staff learned quickly that jealousy had consequences. Marie woke to find her bank account empty and an eviction notice on her door. Every piece of identification she had gone. Her employment history erased. Lisa's car was repossessed. Her sister's scholarship revoked. Her mother's mortgage called in early. The others faced similar fates, not violence, but systematic destruction of everything they'd built. Within 48 hours, everyone who'd made Chantel's life hell was facing ruin. And they all knew why. Word spread. Don't touch Chantel Bailey. Don't speak her name. Don't even think about her. Because the Korean devil was watching. And mercy wasn't on the table anymore. By day 3, Taesung's own organization was fracturing. His lieutenants called emergency meetings, whispered in corners, questioned his decisions. He's losing control, Jiho said to a small group of senior members. Burning our networks for a woman. This isn't strategy. It's insanity. Then what do we do? Someone asked. We remove the problem. Jiho's voice was cold. Not him. Her. Without the girl, he'll refocus. Remember what he's supposed to be. You're talking about killing her? I'm talking about protecting our interests. Jiho pulled out his phone. I know people. Clean, professional. It'll look like an accident. Mutters of agreement rippled through the room. They didn't know Taesung had cameras everywhere, had been listening to every word. Taesung stood in his home office, watching the surveillance footage, and felt something inside him go ice cold. Jiho, his most trusted lieutenant, planning to kill Chantel. 5 years of loyalty. Gone. Replaced by betrayal so complete it would have been funny if it wasn't so dangerous. He made one phone call. Bring him to me. Alive. I want to handle this personally. Within the hour, Jiho was dragged into the penthouse basement, a space Taesung rarely used anymore. Concrete floors, soundproof walls, drain in the center. Jiho saw where he was and knew exactly what that meant. Sir, please. You were planning to kill her. Taesung's voice was conversational. Pleasant, even. Which made it more terrifying. After everything, after 5 years of working together, you decided the solution was murder. She's making you weak. The organization is falling apart because you can't focus. The organization deserves to fall apart. Taesung crouched in front of him. It was built on suffering, on blood, on exactly the kind of cruelty I'm trying to dismantle. And you, he smiled without humor, you represent everything I need to burn down. You can't, the men won't follow you after this. The men will follow me or join you. Taesung stood. I'm offering them a choice. Adapt to the new reality, or disappear with the old one. You're destroying everything we built. No, I'm destroying everything I inherited from monsters. He pulled out his phone. And I'm starting with you. What happened next took 3 hours. Chantel never heard the screams. The penthouse was too well insulated. But she saw Taesung when he emerged. Showered. Changed. No blood visible. But something in his eyes was different. Harder. Colder. He found her in the kitchen, staring out at Kingston through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It's done, he said quietly. What's done? The internal threat. Someone was planning to hurt you. They won't anymore. Chantel turned slowly. What did you do? What I had to. He met her eyes without flinching. I told you I'd dismantle everything. That includes people in my own organization who can't accept change. You're talking about killing your own men. I'm talking about removing people who would have killed you without hesitation. Yes. The honesty was almost worse than lies would have been. How many? She asked. Does it matter? Yes. 12. His voice stayed level. 12 people who chose loyalty to the old empire over the new reality. They made their choice. I made mine. Chantel felt her stomach turn. 12 human beings. 12 men who built careers on human trafficking, drug smuggling, and murder. He stepped closer. Don't mistake me for a hero, Chantel. I'm not saving the world. I'm just correcting the parts of it that hurt you. And if that makes me a monster, then I'm a monster. Why? She hated that her voice shook. Why are you doing this? Because I love you. 3 words, said simply. Honestly. Like they were fact, not feeling. I love you, he repeated. And in 3 more days, I'll have given you everything you asked for: freedom from the network that destroyed your family, safety from anyone who'd hurt you, and the ability to walk away from me completely. But I needed you to know, before you go, that this wasn't obligation, wasn't guilt, was love. Chantel couldn't breathe, couldn't think. You can't love me, she whispered. You don't even know me. I know you eat stale bread with dignity. Know you save half your food for tomorrow because hope matters more than hunger. Know you've survived things that would break most people and still smile at strangers. His eyes held hers. I know enough. You're in love with an idea, a projection, not me, maybe. He didn't look away. But I'm still willing to burn my empire down for that idea. So call it whatever you want. It doesn't change what I'm doing. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Kingston was drowning in chaos. Gangs fighting each other. Trafficking operations collapsing. Money trails disappearing. A power vacuum forming where Taesung's network used to be. All of it because one woman asked for freedom. I'm tired of being owned by fear, Chantel said quietly. I know. I'm tired of being saved, of being protected, of being... Her voice cracked. Of being grateful to the man who represents everything I ran from. Then in 4 days, you'll walk away. Taesung's voice was gentle. And I'll make sure nothing I am, nothing I've done, ever touches you again. What if I don't want to walk away? The question hung between them. Taesung's expression fractured. What? What if... Chantel forced herself to continue. What if I don't know how to hate you even though I should? What if watching you destroy yourself for me makes it worse? What if I'm just as trapped by what you're doing now as I was by what you did before? Then tell me to stop. He moved closer. Tell me to stop and I will. I can't. Why not? Because I've never had anyone fight for me like this. Because protection feels like love even when it shouldn't. Because I'm falling for you and I hate myself for it. She didn't say any of that. Just, because you'd do it anyway. Taesung smiled sadly. Yeah, I would. They stood there in the wreckage of his empire. 2 impossible people bound by violence and mercy and love that might destroy them both. And outside, Kingston burned. Day 7 arrived with rain. Not the violent storm from the night they met, but steady, persistent rain that washed Kingston clean or tried to. Taesung had kept his promise. In 7 days, he'd dismantled 15 years of criminal infrastructure, shut down smuggling routes, destroyed trafficking operations, bankrupted corrupt officials, eliminated anyone connected to the network that had enabled Chantel's suffering. The cost had been astronomical. His organization was fractured. Half his men gone, killed, arrested, or fled. His assets seized or redirected. His reputation as an untouchable power broker shattered. The Caribbean underworld was in chaos. Rival factions fighting for the scraps. Police investigations triggered by anonymous tips. Government officials suddenly facing corruption charges with mountains of evidence mysteriously appearing. Taesung had burned it all down. For her, now he stood in his office, staring at legal documents spread across his desk, and prepared to give her the one thing she'd asked for: freedom. Chantel found him there at noon. She'd spent the week in suspended animation watching the news, seeing Kingston transform, knowing somehow that all of it connected back to one conversation. One impossible promise. You called for me? She said from the doorway. Taesung looked up. He looked exhausted. Older somehow. Like the last 7 days had aged him a decade. I did. He gestured to the papers. It's done. She approached slowly. What's done? Your freedom. All of it. He picked up the first document. This is the deed to the diner building. It's in your name now. Clean title. No liens. You can sell it, renovate it, burn it down, whatever you want. It's yours, Taesung. This, he continued, picking up another paper, is a bank account. $3 million US. Legally yours. Clean money well, as clean as anything in my world can be. It's enough to support your family, start a business, disappear if you want. That's too much. This, third document, is a new identity, completely clean. No connection to me or anything that's happened. Passport, birth certificate, work permits. If you want to leave Jamaica, this gives you that option. Chantel stared at the papers like they were weapons. Why are you doing this? Because I promised. He set down the documents. And this, He pulled out one more folder. This is proof that every smuggling route connected to your stepfather is gone, destroyed. The people who profited from it are bankrupt, arrested, or dead. It won't bring back what you lost. But, his voice roughened, but at least they can't hurt anyone else. You really did it, she whispered. I told you I would burn my empire down. I keep my promises. Chantel picked up the deed with shaking hands, saw her name typed in official letters, proof that something that had been a prison could become hers. What about you? She asked. What happens to you now? Tae-sung leaned back in his chair. I rebuild. Something smaller, cleaner. Or maybe I just disappear for a while. I haven't decided yet. You gave up everything. I gave up nothing important. He met her eyes. Power isn't important. Control isn't important. Empire isn't important. Pause. You're important. The words hit like a physical blow. I can't accept this, Chantel said. You already have. Everything's legal. Signed. Filed. It's done. That's not what I mean. She set the papers down. I can't accept you destroying yourself for me. I can't. Her voice broke. I can't be the reason you lose everything you built. I didn't lose anything. I chose to discard what was poison. He stood, walked around the desk. Chantel, for 15 years I built an empire on blood. I told myself it was survival, strategy, the way the world works. But then I saw you in the rain, eating stale bread with more dignity than I've shown in my entire life. And I realized something. What? That empire wasn't making me powerful. It was making me empty. He stopped in front of her, close but not touching. You reminded me what it felt like to be human. And humans don't build kingdoms on suffering. They protect each other, even when it costs them everything. Tears slid down Chantel's face. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Love someone who's both my savior and my nightmare. Thank you and blame you in the same breath. Want you and fear you simultaneously. Then don't. His voice was gentle. Just take the freedom I'm offering. Walk away clean. Live the life you deserve. And forget about the man who was too broken to deserve you anyway. What if I don't want to forget? Tae-sung's expression cracked. Chantel, what if walking away feels like abandoning you after you just gave up everything? What if staying feels like betraying myself? What if... She stepped closer. What if I'm tired of choosing between my freedom and my heart? Your heart isn't the problem. I am. You were, she corrected. Past tense. The man who ran that empire? I couldn't love him. But the man who destroyed it for me? Who's standing here offering me everything with no strings attached? She touched his face. I don't know how not to love him. You should. His hand came up to cover hers. You should walk away. Build a life that has nothing to do with me. Find someone who isn't you, she finished. Find someone who isn't you. But what if I don't want anyone else? Then you're making a terrible choice. Probably. She almost smiled. But it's my choice. That's what freedom means, right? I get to choose. Even if I choose wrong. Tae-sung was quiet for a long moment. Then, what are you saying? I'm saying, Chantel took a breath. I'm saying give me 6 months. Keep your distance. Don't contact me. Don't protect me. Don't interfere. Let me rebuild my life with the freedom you gave me. Okay. And at the end of 6 months, if you've managed to build something new, something that isn't built on blood, then maybe we try this. Whatever this is. Together. And if I can't, then I'll know I made the right choice walking away. She squeezed his hand. But if you can? If you can prove that mercy wasn't just a moment but a choice you'll keep making? She leaned closer. Then maybe, just maybe, we deserve each other. Tae-sung's eyes closed. 6 months. 6 months. And I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't destroy yourself trying to be perfect. I'm not asking for a saint. I'm asking for a man who's trying to be better than he was. He pulled her against him, then finally touching and buried his face in her hair. I promise, he whispered. 6 months. I'll prove it. They stood like that for a long time. Two damaged people clinging to each other in the wreckage of what was and the possibility of what could be. Then Chantel pulled back, picked up the documents, and walked toward the door. She paused at the threshold. Tae-sung? Yes? Thank you. For giving me back my life. Thank you, he replied, for reminding me I had one worth living. She left then, carrying her freedom in a stack of papers, and didn't look back, because looking back would have broken her, would have made her stay when she needed to go, would have made her choose him over herself when she'd spent years becoming someone who knew better. Tae-sung watched her go and felt something in his chest crack open. Then he picked up his phone and made a series of calls. To lawyers, draft dissolution documents for all remaining illegal operations. To accountants, redirect assets to legitimate businesses. Real estate, investments, clean. To his remaining men, anyone who wants to stay, we're rebuilding. Anyone who wants out, you have severance and references, no judgment. He'd spent 15 years building an empire. He had 6 months to build a life. And for the first time in those 15 years, Taesung Park looked in the mirror and saw someone he didn't hate. Not yet, but maybe soon. Outside, Chantel stood in the rain, the same rain that had brought them together, and let it wash over her. She was free. Terrifyingly, impossibly free. Free to fail, free to succeed, free to choose. And in 6 months, she'd know if the man she'd fallen for was real or just another beautiful lie. She walked away from the penthouse, from Taesung, from everything that had defined her for months. And for the first time in her life, Chantel Bailey walked toward something instead of running away, toward the future she'd build with her own hands, toward the life she'd been told she could never have, toward hope. 6 months later, the diner reopened on a Tuesday morning. Chantel stood outside, staring at the freshly painted exterior, and felt pride swell in her chest. Not the building, though, she'd spent months renovating, modernizing, making it hers, but what it represented. Survival transformed into success, pain transformed into purpose, a cage transformed into a kingdom. The sign above the door read, Bailey's place, her place. She'd done this, with the money Taesung gave her, yes, but with her vision, her work, her choice. Inside, the morning rush was building, new staff carefully chosen, fairly paid, treated with respect, regular customers discovering that the sketchy diner had become a warm, welcoming restaurant. Food that was good, service that was genuine. Chantel had hired her former co-workers who'd lost their jobs when Thomas's operation collapsed. Not out of obligation, but because everyone deserved a second chance. Even Marie, who'd been cruel. Even Lisa, who'd been petty. They worked under new management, Chantel's management, and the rules were simple. Kindness, respect, dignity. Anyone who violated those rules left. No exceptions. Her family was stable now. Her mother's health improving, her brother excelling in school, her sister talking about university. Chantel sent money home still, but now it was from profit she'd earned, not scraps she'd saved. She rented an apartment near the harbor, small, nothing fancy, but hers. She paid her own bills, made her own schedule, lived without fear. She was free, and for 3 months, it had been enough. But then she'd started thinking about him, wondering if he'd kept his promise, if he was building something new. If he thought about her the way she thought about him late at night, when the world was quiet and honesty was easier. She'd heard rumors, whispers through Kingston's grapevine. Taesung Park was still around, but different, quieter. His name no longer associated with violence but with legitimate businesses, real estate development, investment firms. He'd become boring, legal, normal. Some said he'd gone soft, lost his edge. Others said he was playing the long game, that the danger was still there, just hidden better. Chantel didn't know what to believe, until tonight, because tonight marked exactly 6 months since she'd walked out of his penthouse. 6 months since she'd said, "Prove you can be different," and he'd said, "I will." The alley behind the diner hadn't changed much. Still dark, still wet from afternoon rain, still the place where everything began. Chantel closed up at midnight, sent her staff home, and stood in that alley with her heart pounding. She'd sent him a message that morning. Just one line. 6 months. Meet me where it started. Midnight. No response. No confirmation. Maybe he wouldn't come. Maybe he'd moved on. Maybe 6 months of silence had erased whatever had existed between them. Maybe she'd come here alone and realized she'd been holding on to something that never really existed. She heard footsteps, turned, and there he was, Taesung Park, walking through the shadows like he'd never left, like 6 months was nothing. But everything about him was different. He wasn't wearing designer suits anymore. Just jeans, a simple jacket. He looked younger somehow, or maybe just less burdened. He stopped a few feet away, far enough to give her space, close enough that she could see his eyes. "You came," she said. "You asked me to." His voice was the same, deep, careful. "I'll always come when you ask." Even after 6 months? Especially after 6 months. They stared at each other. The rain started again, of course it did, soft and persistent. "Tell me," Chantel said. "Tell me what you've been doing. If you kept your promise." "I dissolved everything illegal," Taesung said simply. Every operation, every connection. It took 4 months and cost me most of my fortune. But it's done. And the men? Anyone who wanted legitimate work, I found them jobs, security, construction, real businesses with real paychecks. Anyone who wanted to stay criminals. He shrugged. They work for someone else now, not me. And you? I invested what was left in property development, affordable housing, community centers. Nothing exciting, nothing dangerous. He smiled slightly. I'm a businessman now, the boring kind. Chantel searched his face for lies. Found none. That must be hard, giving up power. Power was a prison. I'm learning that freedom is better. He stepped closer. Chantel, I spent 6 months proving I could be different. But I need you to know something. What? I didn't do it for you. Not entirely. His voice was raw, honest. I did it for me, because you showed me what I'd become, and I hated it. You gave me the freedom to choose differently, and I chose this. So you're saying you don't need me anymore? She tried to keep her voice light. Failed. No. I'm saying I'm not dependent on you to be good. I'm choosing good because it's better. Because I'm better this way. He reached into his pocket. But I'm also saying, he pulled out a piece of paper. Worn, wrinkled, stained. Chantel's breath caught. The stale bread wrapper from that first night. You kept it, she whispered. I kept it. Taesung held it carefully, like it was precious. It was the moment I remembered I was human. The moment I saw someone worth protecting. The moment everything changed. Chantel felt tears building. Taesung, I don't know what happens next, he interrupted. Don't know if you want me in your life or if 6 months made you realize you're better off alone. But I kept my promise. I proved I could change. And now he looked at her with eyes full of hope and fear. Now it's your choice. It's always been your choice. The rain fell steadily around them. Chantel thought about the girl she'd been 6 months ago, scared, trapped, eating stale bread in the rain because it was all she had. She thought about the woman she'd become strong, free, building a life on her own terms. And she thought about the man in front of her who'd been a monster, then a savior, then finally just a person trying to be better. I choose you, she said quietly. Taesung's expression fractured. What? I choose you. Not because I need you. Not because you saved me. Not because I'm dependent or desperate or afraid. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. I choose you because you chose to be better. Because you destroyed yourself to give me freedom. Because you're standing here in the rain, holding a piece of trash like it's treasure. She touched his face, and he leaned into her palm like he'd been starving for contact. I choose you, she repeated. Because love isn't about needing someone. It's about choosing them. Every day. Even when it's hard. Even when it's scary. Even when... He kissed her. Finally, after months of distance and restraint and fear, he kissed her in the rain, in the alley where it all started, with a stale bread wrapper clutched in one hand and the other pulling her close. And Chantel kissed him back. Not because she owed him. Not because she was grateful or trapped or afraid, but because she chose this. Chose him, chose them. When they broke apart, both breathless, both soaking wet, Taesung pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, he whispered. I've loved you since the night you taught me what mercy looked like. I love you too, she whispered back. Even though you're complicated and dangerous, and probably always will be a little bit broken. Just a little bit? She laughed. Okay, a lot broken, but you're trying. And trying matters. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other in rain and the promise of something new. What happens now? Taesung asked. Now? Chantel pulled back to look at him. Now we figure it out. Together. Day by day. Choice by choice. No empire? No empire. No violence? No violence. Just us? Just us. She smiled. Is that enough? Taesung looked at her, this woman who'd survived everything, who'd demanded better from both of them, who stood in the rain with dignity intact. It's everything, he said, and meant it. They rebuilt slowly. No grand romance, no fairy tale, just two broken people choosing each other, day after day, mistake after mistake, learning how to be together without ownership or control. Chantel ran her restaurant. Taesung built legitimate businesses. They lived separately at first, maintaining independence, proving they could exist without each other before choosing to exist together. A year later, Taesung proposed in the same alley. No ring, just a question. Will you build a life with me? Chantel said yes. Not because he was rich. Not because he was powerful. Not because he'd saved her, but because he'd proven, day after day, that mercy wasn't a moment, it was a choice. The same choice she made every morning when she woke up and chose to love someone who'd been both her nightmare and her salvation. The same choice he made every morning when he chose to be better than what he'd been. They married quietly, small ceremony. Her family, his remaining friends who'd chosen legitimacy over crime. Bailey's place thrived. Taesung's businesses grew. They bought a house on the harbor, not a penthouse, just a home. And sometimes on rainy nights they'd stand in their kitchen and remember the alley, the umbrella, the stale bread, the moment the devil learned mercy, the moment the invisible girl became visible, the moment two impossible people proved that love wasn't about perfection, it was about choice. That's the end of Chantel and Taesung's story. A girl who refused to break, a man who chose to change, and a love that survived blood, rain, and impossible choices. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and comment which moment stayed with you most. I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers and your support means everything. And hey, there's another story waiting for you on screen right now. Click it. You won't regret it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for believing in stories that prove people can change. Until next time.